Hello everyone. So today I actually want to tell you something about that why India does not have its own tech valley the way the US has, or the most of the, like for example, if you look at China also contains most of its domestic apps that are consumed by their people of their country, are all most of them are domestic, right? So what is the reason why does not India was not able to make this ecosystem in India, and why India was not able to make this environment? There are actually couple of reasons for this thing, and I would like to tell you the first reason. So you know what happened after post World War II? India was a third world country. So I want to tell you actually that what is a third world country, okay? So any country that was not the part that did not participate in the World War II from the Allied powers or from the Axis powers, whoever countries did not participated in the World War II, those countries are considered as a third world country. So if you will look at the allies of US, those were called the West majority, that is called the first world country. And if you will see the countries that were the allies power of Soviet, the the Soviet Union, and in the East Germany after post World War II, when US and Soviet Union, they were fighting with each other to get the most part of Europe. So the countries that sideline with US was the first world country. The country that sideline with Russia, those were the second world country. And the countries that did not participated, for example, mostly the subcontinent countries, that were called the third world countries. So the number one reason why we do not have the tech ecosystem the way US has it, because the reason for that is post World War II, when US won that war, they realized something, and what they realized is that the German technology at that time, at the time of the when the World War was happening, was considered to be the best. The German tanks, the German weapons, the German Air Force, the flights that they were using, the planes that they were using, during the World War II, that were actually dominating the Allied powers. For example, France and Spain, Britain, US, that was giving a lot of harm to these countries. So US realized something after post World War II, is that they need to invest heavily into the R&D of their country and the science and tech of their country if they want to become a global power, because they saw the reality. Before that, post World War II, US was not a very big tech hub, but post World War II, they realized something, is that in future, if they want to become the world power, or you can say the soft power or the global power, at least in terms of science and tech, we need to invest heavily into the R&D. And that's what happened post World War II. US started heavily investing in the R&D, in the science, in the tech of their nation. And that the same thing the Russians were also doing. The Soviet army, the Red Army, they were also investing heavily in their country as well. When it comes down to science and tech, they were making high tech weapons. They were making spaceship rockets. If you will see, during the Cold War era, that was literally when John F. Kennedy, when he was the president of United States, that was the time when the first person, Neil Armstrong, he went to the moon, like the first person to ever land on the moon. So that happened during the Cold War era in the 1960s, because the US and the Soviet, they had basically a competition with each other, that which country will dominate the world when it comes down to tech. So that's why the Soviet army and the US, they heavily started investing in the R&D, in the tech of their respective countries. So that is the number one reason why you see that India right now doesn't have its own tech ecosystem, because we never invested heavily in the R&D during those times. And also we got our independence very late. If you will look at the independence, the time when we got our independence, it took us around 2 to 3 decades to even make, because when we got our independence, there were a lot of before that, there were a lot of sovereign states were there in India. So Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, he needed to make sure that India becomes a one country. It does not divides in itself. So that's why it took around 2 to 3 decades to even make the base of the country. So that's why we were unable to invest in the R&D of India during those times. But that time, US and Russia and the West and the European countries, they were not going through these type of struggle that the India was going. So that is why they heavily invested in the tech, they heavily invested in the science, in the computers, in the internet. And that's why that is the reason, because they started investing in the post World War II, that was happened in 40s. That's why you will see that US was the first country when it comes down to most of the companies, most of the biggest companies that you see right now in the world are US based. And that does not happen in one day, because US started investing so much into the R&D in the 40s, that it, it took them around 2 to 3 decades to get the result. So that's what happened when you would look at the US. The first Macintosh was made in US. The first, the first internet company, the Google, the search engine, PayPal, the wallet, every first generation tech company was always US based. That does not happen like unconsciously. It happened because US invested 3 to 4 decades back. In 40s they started investing, and that's why they got the result in the 90s. After 5 decades, after investing so much amount of manpower, so much amount of money, that's when they started getting their results. So that's why you see right now India does not have its own ecosystem, and most of India does not have any tech application that is universally accepted. There is no one. So that is the reason why US was able to have its own Silicon Valley, and India does not have its own Silicon Valley. And also, if you would look during the Cold War era, there was a lot of science projects that they were working on. For example, the Manhattan Project, which was used to bombard the nuclear weapon that was dropped over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That was also made in US. And then after that, the first nuclear weapons that were the most high advanced, the nuclear weapons, then hydrogen weapons, that were all of them were made in US and in Russia because of that reason. So that is why you can see right now that India does not have its own tech ecosystem. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video.